Good morning and welcome to the Media First Studios. My name's James White and I am the CEO of Media First. So for those of you new to these masterclasses, thanks for joining us. Media First are specialists in communications training, and we deliver training in person, online, at our studios and also at our clients' offices. So get in touch if you think that we can help. Now, this is not the first masterclass that we've done about presentations, but it is the first one that we've done about presenting the TED Talk way. TED Talks now exist in more than 170 countries, and they are viewed more than 1.5 million times a day. TED Talks are presentations and videos that present a great idea in 18 minutes or less. When I think of a TED Talk, I tend to think of them as entertaining, inspiring, and motivating presentations. But surely that's what all good business presentations should be, isn't it? So in this masterclass, we will be looking at developing a clear and singular message that will resonate with your audience, how to speak so that people want to listen, the TED Talk way, how to structure your presentations and apply this to conferences, meetings, and community events, pretty much any presentation you're doing, the power of storytelling and why you need to be more like Yoda, which I'm really intrigued about, and rhetorical devices and journalistic techniques to add interest and presentation to make your presentation memorable. So, on the sofa today, I am joined by one of Media First's senior journalist tutors, Victoria Smith. Now, Vic is a Sony Award-nominated TV, radio, and print journalist. She has produced Vanessa Feltz. Jeremy Vine worked on Euronews, The Times, The Telegraph, and extensively across the BBC. Vic, thanks for joining us.
That's me. Happy to be here.
So we're going to be joined by someone else later today as well, aren't we?
Yes, we are. We're going to be joined by the TED Talk master himself, Alan Stevens.
Yeah.
He's going to be chatting to us later on Zoom. Let me tell you a little bit about Alan. I've got lots of notes because he's done lots of things. He's the past president of the Global Speakers Federation, a journalist and published author. Here he is. He's been a TV presenter, an expert interviewee, and as well as presenting his own TED Talks, he's coached lots of other very successful TED Talkers so that they can do good jobs as well. So Alan's going to be with us later so we can chat to him and he can discuss with us some of the challenges that TED Talkers face, and in fact all kinds of presentations, the challenges that come up that we can help with today during this masterclass.
Yeah, so that's definitely worth sticking around for. Alan will be joining us about 5:30, but before that we are going to learn about Yoda as well, aren't we? Which
We're going to learn about Yoda. I'm wearing my Yoda green.
Yeah.
Yoda will be with us later.
I did not get the memo. Memo I did not get. Or something.
Very good.
However Yoda would say it. So we want to make this as interactive as possible. You've heard a little bit from us, but we want to hear from you guys. So you've got a chat which you can just jump in there and you can ask us questions. We've also got Menti that we'll be using. So if you go open up a new browser on your web browser, I couldn't think of the words, web browser or your phone or your iPad or anything like that, and if you go to menti.com and then if you enter the code 42494340, or you could scan that QR code that you've got on your screen now using your phone or a tablet, and that will take you straight there. We'd love you to do that because we really want to hear from you and get some thoughts from you. I'll tell you what, actually, guys, before we do any of that, can you all just do me a little favor? Can you jump into the webinar chat and just drop a quick hello or a thumbs up or a wave or anything, just so that we can see that you're all there? That would be greatly appreciated, and then we know that that's working. Wonderful. Thanks, Stephen. That was super quick. You win.
Wow. Lots of mornings.
Blimey.
Lots of hellos.
Joe, Ricky, hello. Meredith, hi. Wayne, hi everyone.
Hello everyone. Oh, hello Keith from Coin Street.
There they go. I thought that was Vanessa Phelps there, but it was actually Victoria, someone else. Laurable. Thank you very much, guys. Appreciate that. So yeah, find your way over to Menti, please, and then you'll be able to get involved in some of these next questions that we've got for you. Because as I say, we want to make this all about you and make sure that we're delivering to you what you need from us. We do have some pre-submitted questions as well, Vic. So we'll go through those. So thank you to all of you guys who submitted those as well. So first Menti slide. Let's get straight into
Exciting.
it. Yes.
I'm excited.
They all did so well with the hello thing. They nailed that. So I'm hoping they're going to nail this.
Definitely.
What is the largest audience you have presented in front of?
Wow.
So we've got less than 50, 50 to 150, 150 to 500, 500 to 1,000, 1,000 plus. Who's that little show off?
Who's that? It's presented to more than 1,000 people. I'm impressive. But also, it doesn't really matter whether you're presenting
size is not important, as I always say.
You know, and sometimes it can be even more challenging to present to just a few people, all of whom you can see their faces, than actually a big crowd. Which,
completely.
So the challenges are similar.
Yeah, definitely. And doing online presentations is a whole other skill set, isn't it?
It is, for sure.
Some of this stuff that we're going to be talking about today is going to help you no matter what size audience you're presenting to, no matter what format you're presenting in. It's really going to be helpful, and we're going to take a bit of a deep dive, aren't we, into TED Talks, which you're going to do for us in a moment.
Yeah.
Let's find out how confident this group is. And also, who's the person who's done 1,000 plus? Tell us who. Tell us who you are. Get your name in the chat and tell us what that was all about.
Lovely.
So, how confident would you be in delivering a presentation to a large group? So we've got slider here, not confident all the way on the left, and very confident on the right.
So we've got 2s, we've got 3s.
Yeah.
It's moving around there, isn't it? Thank you for your honesty, everybody, because
definitely.
It is scary stuff, isn't it?
It is. This is terrifying.
Yeah, but also nerves are really useful. The adrenaline, you need it. You need the adrenaline to do the job.
Yes, that is very true indeed. So we are hovering around the kind of 2.6. So we're slightly, well, we're middle of the road, aren't we, basically? Which is often what we see with stuff like this. So there's going to be some of you who are really confident, and hopefully you're still going to have something to learn from this masterclass that we're going to be able to teach you and share with you and inspire you. And then there might also be some people who are a little less experienced, and hopefully you will get as much, if not more, as those other guys. Geraldine Cooper, it was you who had 1,000 plus at an event back in your journalism day, working for a big commercial radio station. No PowerPoint though.
Wow, that's impressive.
No PowerPoint.
Yeah. Do you know what? PowerPoint is not necessary, as you proved by doing it without PowerPoint to 1,000 people. So amazing. Geraldine's our hero, I think, so far.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Hero of the day.
We haven't got to Yoda yet.
Well, this is very true. Yeah, exactly. And other heroes can emerge. It's all fun.
Other heroes are available.
So next Menti is what worries you most about delivering a presentation. So this is a free type thingy-majig, so you can get in there and type away and let us know what you think.
Oh, technology. Yeah, I'm with you. Yep. Yeah,
but we're surrounded by people running the tech, and it still terrifies me.
Speaking fast, that's such a good one, because when we get nervous, we speed up. Yeah, good point. Overrunning. We never overrun, do we, James?
Never, never. And I am always on time as well to every business meeting that I attend. Tongue-tied, yeah. It's coming across as natural. Difficult questions afterwards. They're the bit I'm not in control of. Well, there are some tips and advice that we can give you on that. We're not actually going to cover it in this, but what I would encourage you to do is go onto our website and have a look at the bridging technique. So if you go onto our blog page and search for either ABC or search for bridging, then you will find something that's going to help you with that. Yeah, lots of things about technology, having something originally to say, not knowing the answer to the question, go have a look at bridging.
Yeah, a lot of this is about that kind of fear of the performance, getting up there and all the things that could and might go wrong. But you know what? We're human beings, and things go wrong all the time.
Yeah.
And people forgive us. If we make a mistake or stumble or go blank, people tend to be on our sides, and they wish us well. They want us to do well.
Yeah, that's it. They do want you to be successful, don't you?
They're there to listen to you, because, let's face it, you're the experts in the room. So whatever you say will be interesting, even if you arm and err. Nobody cares about that.
No.
And it's fine to be human. It's fine to stumble, to have a cough, to go blank, to get slightly off track. But we're going to help you with all of that, with some tips and techniques which will give you some structure to your TED Talks and your presentations.
I'm glad you said it's fine to be human, because I was a little bit concerned you were going to tell us to actually turn into Yoda, which is not going to happen.
Well, he wasn't human. Or was he?
No, I don't know.
Day.
Oh,
yeah.
I mean, he wasn't human. I just assumed he wasn't human. So Vic, you're going to take a closer look, aren't you, at some of the structure of a TED Talk and things like that?
Absolutely. I'm going to stand up.
Go
Excitedly,
for it.
and I'm going to move over to this screen over here. I love these things that people have keep them coming. All this chat's amazing. Brain freeze, nerves, forgetting what you're saying. This happens all the time to everybody, great and good, and it's fine. As I say, just try and carry on best you can. You'll be forgiven. You know, we've all had those terrifying moments of drying, forgetting our lines, and the world goes on. It's all okay. But when you're preparing your presentation, because preparation is important, a lot of people sometimes think they can wing it. We would say don't try and wing it. Why would you do that to yourself? You know, give yourself a chance. Prepare, plan, rehearse out loud, and then you'll do a better job and you'll feel less nervous about it. One of the things that you can think about when you're preparing your TED Talk or your presentation is what your personal brand might be. And that's not just market talk, it's about what do I want? How do I want to come across as a person giving a talk? So you could do that in 3 words. You can choose 3 words right now. So I'm going to choose 3 words that perhaps reflect the way I'd like to come across. Hopefully it's working. So my 3 words would be clear, calm, and friendly. Hopefully you agree. That's what I'm hoping to get across. And that helps me think, oh, okay, yeah, my intention here, my brand is to be clear, calm, and friendly. So have a think about your 3 words. In fact, if you can pop them in the Zoom chat, we'd love to see what your 3 words about your personal brand might be. I'm going to ask James, actually. I don't know if the camera can pan on to James or not, but James, shout out 3 words about yourself.
We're surrounded by cameras, Vic. I'm sure they can make that happen. Yeah, do pop that in the chat. Mine, I've got one of yours as well.
Okay, well that's fine. I'll let you off.
And I'm going to ask you, do you think it's the calm one? No. Mine is friendly, inspirational, and supportive.
Lovely.
That's kind of what I'm aiming for.
Lovely.
I know that whenever I do a presentation with you, though, I'm the one that's kind of slightly more excitable, and you're the calmer one.
Swan-like. I mean, we've all got the adrenaline kicking in and the nerves, and we've all planned and prepared for our talks.
Yeah.
So it's all there. It just perhaps comes across in different ways. But that little exercise in branding means that you can think, right, okay, this is how I'm going to try and come across. Because I don't know if you know how quickly people make judgments by looking at you. It's 7 seconds, yeah? And we want people to like you. While you're delivering your TED Talk. That's what we're going for. So if you can come up with your own personal brand that you want to get across, that's a good place to start. Now, where else should we start? Maybe at the beginning, and you might want to structure your talks by thinking about the beginning or not. You might want to start with the end, as a lot of authors, playwrights do. They think, you know, I know how the Harry Potter series is going to end before I even start writing all the books. So you might want to know where you want to be at the end. The end might relate to the beginning. What I mean by this is you need to pick one clear key message. That can be hard to find and it takes a bit of work. Once you've worked out that message, you can use that at the beginning and go back to it at the end. And refer to it in the middle as well, because repetition helps your audience understand what your message is. Let's have a look at Chris Anderson, who's one of our TED Talk experts out there in the virtual world. Chris does a lot of work on messaging and how you can use that in your presentation. So let's take a look at Chris Anderson and what he has to say.
Let me show you what I mean. Here's Hayley. She is about to give a TED Talk, and frankly, she's terrified.
Hayley Van Dyke.
Over the course of 18 minutes, 1,200 people, many of whom have never seen each other before, are finding that their brains are starting to sync with Hayley's brain and with each other. They're literally beginning to exhibit the same brainwave patterns. And I don't just mean that they're feeling the same emotions. There's something even more startling happening. Now let's take a look inside Hayley's brain for a moment. There are billions of interconnected neurons in an impossible tangle. But look, here, right here, a few million of them are linked to each other in a way which represents a single idea. And incredibly, this exact pattern is being recreated in real time inside the minds of everyone listening. That's right. In just a few minutes, a pattern involving millions of neurons is being teleported into 1,200 minds just by people listening to a voice and watching a face.
Now that is one happy-looking audience, and that's because they get it. They get Hayley's idea. We don't even know what Hayley's idea is, but we can see that it's resonating, that people are thinking, oh, this idea might relate to me and my life, my story. So whatever Hayley is doing, she's making a connection with the audience, whether that audience is a few people or over 1,000. And that's what we're trying to do, is to make a connection. So we need to be simple and clear with a message that resonates. And it's worth road testing your message to make sure you're happy with it. Try it out on friends, family, colleagues, or whatever, to see that they get it, that they understand it. One clear message, backed up with an example of what you mean. And the best kind of example is a human example, because we all relate to stories about people. Let's get a bit more from Chris on that.
Here are just a few examples shared from the TED stage. Sir Ken Robinson, creativity is key to our kids' future.
My contention is that creativity now is as important in education as literacy, and we should treat it with the same status.
Elora Hardy, building from bamboo is beautiful.
It is growing all around us. It's strong, it's elegant, it's earthquake resistant.
Chimamanda Adichie, people are more than a single identity.
The single story creates stereotypes. And the problem with stereotypes is not that they are untrue, but that they are incomplete.
Yeah. So 3 clear, strong, simple messages. Creativity is as important in education as literacy. Building from bamboo is beautiful. People are more than a single identity. Very different messages delivered in a simple, clear way, because nobody ever asks for a presentation to be more complicated. So it's not dumbing down, it's just being clear, being simple and strong about that message. These guys will have rehearsed that, they will have honed it until it really lands. They will have road tested it, as we're suggesting that you do. Now, I want to tell you a story about some oysters, but before I do that, before you think, I'm not listening to this bit because I don't care, I just wanted to have a look at the webinar chat, because there's some really great brands coming in. So we've got approachable, entertaining, friendly, there you go.
Yeah.
Informed, concise and engaging, lovely, that's from Rick. Annalisa, relatable, clear and confident. Sally, honest, approachable, energizing, I love that.
Lots of knowledgeable as well in there.
Yeah.
Which, I think that makes a lot of sense, obviously.
It does, because remember, you guys doing the talks, you're the experts in the rooms. People have come to listen to you because you know more about this stuff than they do. So you're always the expert in the room, whether you're doing an interview with journalists, a TED talk, a presentation, you're the one with the knowledge, and that's why you've got a captive audience to some extent. Another little tip is that we never know what you don't tell us. So if you forget to tell us something or leave something out, let it go, because we don't know. So therefore we can't judge. And that happens sometimes, doesn't it? You think, I meant to use that particular example or that statistic or that story, and you don't have time, or it doesn't happen. It doesn't matter, let it go. And people worry about ums and ers. Hello, have you met me? I mean, it happens all the time. We're human beings. Nobody else notices, nobody else cares. So please don't worry about ums, ers, your accent. People come up with all these things that they think are important about their vocal delivery. We can help with a bit of that, but also let a lot of that go, because nobody really minds, nobody really cares. They're not here to judge you on your ums and ers. They're here to listen to your idea, to what you have to say. So we've been talking about strong, clear messages. I mentioned oysters, didn't I? Okay, this is where people might think, I don't want to hear about oysters. So imagine that you had to give a TED talk about oysters, particularly about breeding oysters in captivity. How are you going to make that land? This actually happened to a marine biologist who was invited onto national radio, BBC Radio 4, to talk about breeding oysters in captivity. A challenging subject at the best of times, particularly on the radio. But what she did, and I think we've got a slide of this, was when she was referring to putting oysters in cages to breed them in captivity, she called this, it's like an oyster love hotel. So when she was asked what her university was doing to reintroduce oysters, she said, we're hanging oysters in cages like love hotels. And this made people sit up and listen, because they thought, oh, okay, this is fun, this is unusual, this is interesting. Now I'm suddenly interested in oysters being bred in captivity, and I never thought I would be. So I'm going to stop what I'm doing, or maybe turn up the radio or whatever, and have a listen, just because of this strong, clear, pithy message. Oyster love hotels. And you can see it went a little bit viral. The phrase was coined and used in blogs and tweets and all kinds of things, as you can see here. And that's the beauty of a short, simple, clear message. And then, of course, we need something to back it up. We need examples to show us what we mean by that message. But once you've reeled us in with a strong, clear message, then you're on the way to winning over the audience, because we want to hear more. We want to hear more about the oyster love hotels and how they work. The person that's put this the most concisely is probably Albert Einstein, who said, if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. So hopefully that resonates and makes sense, because a simple, clear, strong message will get you a long way, and you can repeat it throughout your presentation so that we, the audience, understand and can relate to how we feel about your message and how that makes us reflect upon ourselves. I'm going to sit back down now, James.
Do that, though. Thank you very much. People often say, whenever we encourage people to come up with one message, how can I just have one message? But it's one overarching message, isn't it? It's one big theme. It's one, and that's really what people need to work on.
Yeah, and we heard those 3 simple examples.
Yeah.
Building with bamboo is beautiful. I mean, I've never ever thought about that before, but now I'm like, okay, what does she mean? Let's have some examples. Yeah.
And how important to go from building with bamboo to the structure of a presentation? Clang. But how important is the structure of a presentation?
No, that's a good point, because you've got your message, you've road tested it, you're happy with it, and now you're thinking, right, I know I meant to put it at the start and the end, maybe in the middle, but actually presentations have a shape, they have a structure, which I think might help us when it comes to planning and preparing them. So let's take a look at this video by Nancy Duarte, who's very excited because she has taken famous speeches and discovered that they have a similar structure, a similar shape, and she's going to tell us a bit more about that.
Cool.
This is the shape of a great presentation. Isn't it amazing? It's crying. So I want to walk you through it, because it's actually pretty astounding. There is a beginning, a middle, and an end, and I want to walk you through it, because the greatest communicators of all time, I went through speeches, everything, actually I can overlay the shape. Even the Gettysburg Address follows the shape. So at the beginning of any presentation, you need to establish what is. You know, here's the status quo, here's what's going on, and then you need to compare that to what could be. Now you need to make that gap as big as possible, because there's the commonplace of the status quo, and you need to contrast that with the loftiness of your idea. So it's like, you know, here's the past, here's the present, but look at our future. Here's a problem, but look at that problem removed. Here's a roadblock, let's annihilate the roadblock. You need to really amplify that gap. This would be like the inciting incident in a movie. It's when suddenly the audience has to contend with what you just put out there, and they have to say, wow, do I want to agree with this and align with it or not? And then the rest of your presentation should support that. So the middle goes back and forth. It traverses between what is and what could be, what is and what could be. Because what you're trying to do is make the status quo and the normal unappealing. And you're wanting to draw them towards what could be in the future with your idea adopted. Now, on your way to change the world, people are going to resist. They're not going to be excited. They may love the world the way it is. So you'll encounter resistance. That's why you have to move back and forth. It's similar to sailing. When you're sailing against the wind and there is wind resistance, you have to move your boat back and forth and back and forth. That's so you can capture the wind. You have to actually capture the resistance coming against you when you're sailing. Now, interesting, if you capture the wind just right and you set your sail just right, your ship will actually sail faster than the wind itself. It's a physics phenomenon. So by planting in there the way they're going to resist between what is and what can be, it's actually going to draw them towards your idea quicker than should you not do that. So after you've moved back and forth between what is and what could be, the last turning point is a call to action, which every presentation should have. But at the very end, you need to describe the world as a new bliss. This is utopia with my idea adopted. This is the way the world is going to look when we join together and we solve this big problem. So you need to use that as your ending in a very poetic and a dramatic way.
There you go. That's Nancy Duarte on applying some physics to presentations and saying there are shapes. She road tested this on both the I Have a Dream speech and the Steve Jobs iPhone launch.
Okay.
Both of which started with the status quo, as she said, and ended with a lofty vision.
Yeah.
By which point they brought the audience with them, both those cases. So here's a slide of what Nancy was talking about. Now, you don't have to do this. You don't have to apply.
Exactly, and you don't have to necessarily do it this many times, but I think it's a really cool structure, isn't it? To be able to go, look, this is where we are now, this is what's going to, you know, where we're going, even this is where we are now, this is what it could be, but if we don't do anything, then in a few months' time, this is where we'll be, but if we did do something, this is where we're going to end up, you know, it's that.
And it's a good reminder as well that you can keep going back to repeating your key message or call to action to remind people, to take them with you, to say, if you embrace this idea that I have, this call to action, this is where we could be, this is where we could take you. And that's where the inspiration comes in.
It's trying to get people to visualise it in their mind, isn't it? What I also like about this, though, is that it's not just about you being stood on stage going, I'm the expert, I've got all the knowledge, because that's not really what it's all about, is it?
That's exactly true. So we all get really worried. It's come up a lot in the chat and in the Menti. People get nervous. What if I do something wrong? What if something goes wrong for me? I think we can take a little bit of the weight off our shoulders by remembering that we are not there to be the star of the show or the hero of the presentation. And by realising that, it makes us think, oh, it's not about me or my performance or my voice or my presentation or how I move or how I look. So who is it about? It's about the audience. They've come to see and hear what you have to say.
And it's about positioning them as the hero as well, is it?
Yeah, they're super important because they're the ones, we saw in that earlier video, we need to get their brains to understand our clear message and to relate to it. So let's take an analogy here. Have you ever seen Star Wars?
Yes.
Many times?
Yeah, quite a few times. I've tried to make the kids watch it as well when they were younger.
Me too.
Yeah.
So I love a bit of Star Wars. I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, but I think most people here will at least have heard of Star Wars and know a bit about Star Wars. It's been around for a while. So who would you say, and this is something for everyone to think about, if you had to pick a hero from Star Wars, you know, there's a few possibilities, aren't there?
Well, it's Luke, isn't it? Sure.
Well, it's Luke. I mean, some people might say it's Leia. Some people might say Han Solo, Chewbacca, R2-D2, but the real action hero of the piece is Mr. Luke Skywalker, as you say. Yeah, he's the one I think who has the most laser.
He's got the most power, isn't he?
Yeah, he's got the most power. So, but is Luke the hero? Luke is certainly the action hero that fights the baddies. But who inspires Luke? Who is Luke's mentor? Who is the power behind the throne, which is Luke? And that is a small green fella called Yoda. He's Yoda giving a TED talk.
I love this.
And the audience is rapt, and there he is on stage. Yoda's job, our job, as TED Talk presenters or any kind of presenters, is to be the mentor, to be the one who gives the gift of the good idea. So Yoda, Luke would be nothing without Yoda, because Yoda taught Luke how to fight, how to use the Force, how to rid the world of the baddies.
It's like Yoda's like the ultimate business coach, isn't he?
Isn't he? Yeah.
Like he didn't actually tell Luke what to do necessarily. I remember he would just kind of ask questions of him and, you know, give strange, twisted analogies and stuff to make him metaphors and things to make him think differently.
And spoiler alert here, but even when Yoda is no longer with us...
What?
Oh my God, I can't believe you didn't realise that. Even from beyond the grave, Yoda's still there within Luke because Luke has learnt all he needs to know from his mentor, and that is us. So we are not the heroes. We are not the Luke Skywalkers. Okay, so put away your lightsabers. We are Yoda. Yoda we are.
Yoda we are. So we need to be more Yoda.
Be more Yoda.
I should have worn green just like you.
Exactly. Be more Yoda. It's not about, you know, whether you shined your shoes, although I don't know, maybe hopefully you would have done, or you know, it's all not about your ums and ers and your accents and all the other things that people are worried about. It's about what the audience gets from you, because the audience is the hero, not us on stage. It's about them. They're the ones who've come to see us to try and learn something, which they will, because of course you're the experts in the room. So let's all be a bit more Yoda.
Love it. What's up next, Vic? We're talking
What's
about
up next?
storytelling.
We're talking about storytelling.
Aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we're telling stories about people, which is what we want to do, so we've got that clear message that we've road tested, that we're happy with, and now we need to back it up with stories, human stories. And the reason for that is because we are hardwired to love stories about people. We've been doing it from the dawn of time, sitting around our campfires, telling stories, passing them on.
Yeah, cave paintings are stories, aren't they?
Yeah. So we're absolutely hardwired. So knowing that our audience loves a story and will be receptive to it means that we can use stories to help us with our presentations. And these personal stories, they might be about you. You're the expert in your field. You've probably got loads of stories that you tell your mates or your family. This is what we want. Tell us your stories. People are sometimes very cautious about telling their own experiences and their own stories, but they really work. They captivate your audience. They resonate. They relate because they think, oh, I know someone like that, or that applies to my life or my family. So stories are great. And the best kind of stories are about people, either you, somebody else to illustrate your story, a case study we call it, maybe somebody in the audience or the audience as a whole. And what we want from a story is the classic Star Wars structure. We want a likable hero who has a challenge, an obstacle, a roadblock to overcome, and we want to see how your idea, your message, your call to action can help that challenge be overcome. So that's a shape in itself.
That goes back, doesn't it, to Nancy's kind of structure of so explain it again. So it's so you've got a likable hero,
like Luke Skywalker.
Yeah.
It's got an obstacle or a challenge to face. Has to learn how to do that.
What it could look like going up, and then back down. Let me remind you what it's like, and back up again. Yeah.
Overcoming that challenge. And that's why we invest in heroes. In the heroes of our story, which might not be Luke Skywalker. It might be our neighbour who's having trouble paying her rent, and you've got an idea as to how to help her by helping her overcome the problems she's having financially. You've brought us into a story where we suddenly care about your neighbour. We'll give her a name, we'll give her some context, we'll say that she's Sheila, a single mum with 3 kids, going to 3 different schools. She can't afford to pay the rent or buy their uniform. She has to choose between heating and eating. Already we're thinking, what's going to happen? What's going to happen next to Sheila?
So the oysters were the heroes.
The oysters were the heroes as well. Because we want to know what happens next.
Not human heroes, but they were the heroes.
Yeah, so stories are really, really powerful. And when you're thinking of your story, which does take some road testing, some rehearsing, with all those little details that reel us in, names, places, ages, locations, the adversity that has to be overcome, and how we can help do that, you repeat it. You think, when do I repeat my message and my story? Repetition really works, doesn't it? Okay, how many times do we hear the words feel the force or use the force, Luke? We need to hear the message and the story several times. And the other thing that you can do is what we call painting pictures with words. So helping us visualize.
That's a very radio saying, isn't it?
Well, that's because it's essential on radio, isn't it? Because that's all we've got is our ability to paint pictures with words. So help take us there. If you're going to talk about oysters, caged oysters, we need to understand what that looks like. Oh, it's like a love hotel for oysters. They're all hanging around in their cages breeding. Got it, okay? So painting pictures, really taking us, because you're the expert, so you know this stuff, but you have to tell us the story so that we can be in your world and really understand where you are and what you're talking about. Telling stories. And another good thing that you can use is metaphors or analogies. Analogies work really, really well. If you think back to pandemic times when it was very complicated, people were struggling to understand what the restrictions were week in, week out. The best person that actually worked this out for us was a guy called Jonathan Van Tam. I mean, he's just, very high up in the medical profession, but what he did was use analogies. He used football analogies so that all of us could understand what we were meant to be doing, where we were meant to be, bubbles, all the rest of it. He used very clear, simple football analogies to help us understand. The result was we related to him, we liked him, and we trusted him. And that's because he made his message clear, simple, and relevant to all of us. Even if we're not football fans, we all know someone who is, someone in our family is. We all understand the passion for football that exists. And finally, one little thing that you might want to pop into your presentations is this: the power of the pause. So So by pausing, I'm hoping you're thinking, oh, what are you going to say next? And maybe listening more than you were before. So building in pauses, although it might feel terrifying to you to do it, can be really effective. James is listening. He's got a smile on his face. That's the power of the pause. So it's fine to stop and let your audience reflect. It can really work. It's a nice little technique. Try it, practice it out loud, and just see. And also, that will address some of those issues of perhaps speaking too fast when you're nervous, which we all do. So practice that power of the pause.
Something on the speaking too fast tip that someone gave me was to speak slowly enough, or speak slower, obviously, and then speak even slower, and then speak even slower to the point where it seems that you're talking too slow. And at that point, you're probably at the right pace.
Yeah. And if you build in those pauses, you give yourself time to breathe, which is really important.
Yeah,
because
completely.
people struggle with that. They forget to breathe, and then it sort of builds up. So take a break.
Yeah, it gets faster and faster and faster.
Yeah.
And someone else will put blushing as well, you know, and that sometimes happens when you get faster and faster and faster, your anxiety levels go up. And it's at that point when you start to flush and, you know, you start to sweat. And you're like, oh my God, it's getting worse.
That's a good point. Actually, a bit of makeup will help.
Yeah,
you
makeup
with
does
that.
wonders.
For all of us, a bit of powder on a shiny face will help us appear less sweaty. So, but take your time, yeah? Build in those pauses.
Yeah, definitely.
It's really important. So, how to speak so someone will listen. Well, we've gone through a few things already, haven't we? But I think we've got a slide on this. So this is the TED way of how to speak so someone will listen. And there's a few things to think about here. So yeah, be honest with us, okay? You know, you're the expert in the room. We trust you. We want to trust you. So tell us straight. Be clear, be straight. Keep it simple. This is a lovely one, authenticity, be yourself. People worry about this, about how they're perceived, which is why we asked you earlier on about your personal brand. So please be yourself. You own your own stories better than anybody else in the room. We want to trust and like you. So long gone are the days when everybody had to speak like the Queen and walk and talk in a certain way. Be you.
Be yourself.
Do you. Yeah, absolutely. And on that, integrity, be true to your word so that we trust and believe you and like you. So double check your facts to make sure they're right, because if you don't, someone else will. And this all comes down to the planning, the preparation, and the practicing out loud. Love, I mean, this sounds very Cali, doesn't it? Very California.
Cali.
But it just means that, you know, care about your audience. Remember, you're Yoda. So they're Luke, so wish them well. You're there for them, okay? This is about them, not you. So
inspire,
care.
motivate, and
Exactly, because you care about the fact that they've turned up to listen to you, which is amazing. So
completely.
It's for them.
So, thank you, Vic.
You're welcome.
You are very welcome. Sorry, we had during the practice, I said welcome about 58 million times. So thanks for the little in-joke there. So we're going to be joined by Alan Stevens now, aren't we? I'm excited about this. It's going to be great to get him on the show. So let's get Alan on. Alan is a past president of the Global Speakers Federation, a journalist and a published author, and has been both a TV presenter and expert interviewee. As well as presenting his own TED Talk, he's coached many other successful speakers ahead of their own TED Talks and presentations. Alan, welcome to the show.
Thank you, James. Hello, Vic. Some great advice already. And Yoda, I am not.
I love the background, Alan. That's fantastic. So, Alan, I watched your TED Talk recently. Tell everybody what that was about. What was it you covered?
Well, the TED Talk I did quite a few years ago, it was called Make Your Own Adventure. And the background to it was I'd done a number of talks. I've done thousands of talks over the years, and I ended up talking with a bunch of adventurers, people who swung the Channel naked or climbed Everest from both sides, and I'd done none of those.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, you could just make your own adventure. An adventure is something that starts and ends, but you don't know what happens in the middle.
Yep.
So I just made up a TED Talk about making your own adventure, and it went down very well.
What was your adventure?
My adventure was called The Pointless Odyssey.
Okay.
And I discovered that no one had ever visited the highest points of every English county in one continuous journey. And the highest point in Norfolk is Cromer Car Park, incidentally. So it's quite doable.
So did you do them all? Or is that a spoiler? Do we need to go and look something up to find out whether or not you covered it all?
Well, you'll have to buy my book on that.
I didn't even know that was coming.
Very good.
Signed copy in the post, please. So tell us, what's the advice that you give to people when you're coaching them for TED Talks? What are your top tips?
Sure. Well, I've coached thousands of people for talks, mostly a lot for TED Talks. I always say, and Vic mentioned this as well, start at the end, and I always say start with the last line.
Okay.
So it's not just where do you want to get to, but what do you want to say?
Yeah.
Because if you know what those last few words are, it's important. I also talk to people about the week ahead test. If somebody meets somebody a week later after they've seen you deliver your TED type talk and they weren't there, what do they hear about it? What's the message that gets passed on? Because that's your core message. So always think, what is my week ahead test, and is the start and end, and so on. And the third thing is, and this has been mentioned as well, I think by both of you, treat it as a radio broadcast initially.
Okay.
I'm an old radio presenter back in the day, and that thing about the oysters and so on, the love hotels and creating pictures in people's minds is really important. Every speech I create, every speech I coach, I say we'll treat it as a radio broadcast initially, and we'll add in visuals and slides if they make it better. Yeah.
Because you're trying to get the audience to imagine it in their own minds, aren't you? Because that's when they're engaged.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you can, you want them to be vicariously part of a story.
Yeah.
So if you can tell a story in a way that they can identify with it, they can resonate with it, they can feel almost they were an observer in the story, that's really what you want to do. And you want to actually create that impression. The thing we saw of the brain, where people were getting in sync with people's thoughts. That's what you're trying to achieve.
Interesting what you said, Alan, about the use of slides and PowerPoints, because I think, what would you say? I think a lot of people feel they can depend on their slides, but that's not really helping paint a picture, is it? In fact, we've heard from somebody who spoke to over 1,000 people without PowerPoint, and I wonder what you think about that. I think fewer slides, the better. The ability to paint the pictures yourself works so much more strongly. What would you think?
Absolutely, Vic. I agree. And in fact, I spend a lot of my time trying to coach people not to use slides.
Great.
Yeah.
Even in business presentations, you really don't need to. And that's why I come back to that concept of radio broadcasting. In fact, I've spoken to over 10, I don't want to blow my own trumpet, but I've spoken to over 10,000 people without slides.
Right.
And the thing is, you don't need slides. You don't need them on the radio. The great presenters, the great speakers, great political speakers don't use slides. If you can use a slide to make it better, that's fantastic, but you really don't need to. And if you watch my TED talk, which I hope some people will, on my TEDx talk, I was using 3 slides and the slide machine failed. So just after the start of the talk, I look at the blue screen of death and suddenly realise that I've got no slides at all, so I just carry on as though they were never meant to be there in the first place.
Interesting side note, the TED Talks that are actually online, the videos that are online, those are actually edited ever so slightly as well. They will remove those mistakes and things. They don't just go up live as is. So
sadly, mine's not edited.
Well, we wouldn't have known about the broken slides. That's the point I'm making.
But I think that's really reassuring, because things do go wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, I lost my voice there about 10 minutes ago. Okay, your slides went down, and it happens, and it will happen. I quite like having to think on my feet and think, right, how am I going to get around this obstacle? And that comes with practice. But it's also fine. The audience is on your side, isn't it, Alan, when things do go a little bit wrong?
Absolutely. The people, they all want you to succeed. The most nervous people in a presentation are the audience. Because they want you to perform well, and you've got the chance to do that. And you're absolutely right. If something goes wrong, the mark of a professional is to get round it. The mark of a good presenter is to manage when things don't quite work. And that's a lot of what I get people to practice. What if that happened, or what if that didn't happen? How would we carry on as though that was supposed to happen in the first place?
Alan, sometimes a TED Talk can feel a little bit like a Disney film. Just a little bit cliched, with a childhood story and some profound ending. How do you avoid that, or is that just something that TED like?
I think that can happen, but I think Vic homed in on it there, because it's about personal stories. It's about a story that you were part of. And if it's a story that you were part of, it has quirks, it has oddities, it has failures, it has vulnerability. And those sorts of things you don't always get in a Disney story. You do get some of them. So I think you've got to make it personal. You've got to make it simple and relatable. I often talk about the simple, relatable example. How can you imagine something happening? And a great way to tell a story, make a point, and then give people an example in their world. If this happened to you, have you ever had this happen?
Yeah.
Isn't it like something you remember? And then that's where they make the connection. Story, point, example.
Yeah. We call that another structure very similar to that is point, story, point. Which is, you know, tell, show, tell. You know, it's that same mechanic, isn't it?
You want them to imagine that happening to them.
Yeah.
How can they imagine that happening in their world, whoever they are and whatever they do? Because then that idea will stick.
What sort of support did you get from TED when you did your TED Talks, and you know what when you've coached other people? You know, is there some guidance? Do they send you out a pack? Do they do anything? Tell us about that. What's it look like?
How can I put this? Yes and no. Mostly not really. TEDx is a franchise, as you know.
Yeah.
The TED Talks are the ones that are global and the ones that started off 34 years ago now. But the TEDx talks are very variable. And I think if you're considering doing a TEDx, you need to look very closely at the organisation, at the previous talks that have been done. Some are brilliant, some are superbly professional and done really well. Some perhaps a little bit less so.
Yeah.
And that puts a lot of onus on you, but you don't get an awful lot of advice about what goes in the TED Talk. That's really down to you, and if you manage to find a coach to help you, that's great.
Yeah, definitely. So I wonder if you can help us out with some of the questions that we've had. People have pre-submitted questions, and of course I can see some questions coming in there as well. So if you've got any other questions, guys, please do just pop them into the chat. Right, let's have a little look. So, well, first off, how do you raise your profile with TED Talk organisers? How do you get on and do a TEDx speech or a TED Talk? How does it work? Great
question. Well, there are calls for speakers. And you can go on social media and you can actually look for calls for speakers, or what you can do, because a lot of TED events are annual, you can look at the TED Talk when it occurs and then contact the organizer. It's always publicized on the website, and you can say, when is your next event, presumably a year's time, when does the call for speakers go out? You need to be a bit proactive.
Yeah, okay, cool. A lot of people have asked about memorizing speech. Stephanie has asked, how do you manage memorizing what it is you want to say?
Well, the thing is, I would advise people not to memorize word for word. Don't try and go verbatim. Don't learn a script, because then you'll sound like an actor. And actors, except the best ones, are authentic, but some of the worst ones are not. You're not an actor, you're a presenter. What I advise people to do is to remember chunks of a speech, and most important, the segues. How do I get from this story to that story?
Yep.
Or from this story to that example? And if you remember half a dozen segues, that will probably get you through an 18-minute talk without too much bother.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's really helpful as well, isn't it, Vic, to be able to have a kind of anecdote in your back pocket, so that if you do become flustered, you do lose your way, then you can kind of default to that anecdote, and maybe a few of them that are going to get you through that and buy you a bit of time.
Yeah, or back to your message or idea.
Yeah,
and then it will all come back.
Yeah, exactly.
But sorry, just coming in there, there's a little memory trick that I advise people to use, that you say the last line you said again. So if you lose your way, just repeat what you just said, and that'll often act as a memory jogger.
Yeah.
It'll suddenly bring you back to the place where you were supposed to be in your talk. Or the other thing you can do is just say to the audience, what do you think about what I just said?
Yeah.
And then while they're responding, you can get back in your place.
Exactly. Just have a think about that. Walk over and get some water and buy yourself 15-20 seconds. Claire has asked, has the nature of a successful TED Talk changed in the years since they began?
No, I don't believe it has. I think because it's about an idea worth spreading, a simple, repeatable idea, that concept has stayed exactly the same. The way in which they're presented has varied a little. They've got shorter. There are quite a lot of TED Talks now that are under 10 minutes. Because people like bite-sized information. So that's one trend I've certainly seen. And interestingly, they've got fewer slides in than they used to have when they started out, and I like that. I think it's a good trend.
Yeah, definitely.
Good question come up there. When you blank out during your presentation, how do you snap out of it? I mean, I think you just mentioned perhaps throwing to the audience or repeating the last line. That's a big worry.
By the way, you can actually have notes. I mean, I've been speaking for over 40 years. I still have notes on a postcard in my pocket. I never take the notes out, but I know they're there.
Yeah.
And the mere fact that I know they're there often helps me to get through a talk without losing my place.
Jenny's actually asked that question. How do you feel about having notes in front of you during a presentation? I'm always worried I'll forget my next point on stat, but then also worried about being judged by the important people by needing notes in a boardroom meeting.
Well, of course, that's a common fear, isn't it? And we've all come across that, and I'm sure you train people to get over that. The thing is, keep it brief, keep it simple, keep it concise and to one point. And one of the keys is rehearsal.
Yeah.
And rehearse out loud. If you've rehearsed out loud 3 or 4 times, you're not going to lose your place in a talk because you've got that kind of muscle memory going on.
Yeah. Jenny, I would also say, I think cue cards could be quite handy, or just something like that, as opposed to a printout piece of A4. But ultimately, you are the important person in a room when you are presenting. So if you are presenting to a board, and you're in a boardroom meeting, they've actually asked you to go there because they want to hear from you. They want to hear what it is you've got to say. Yeah. They want your knowledge. They need to hear from you so that they can make a decision. So at that point, you are actually the important person. Now, obviously, how you present now, we want to make them the heroes, but they need you there.
Yeah, nothing's ever going to go exactly word for word as you planned it, because then you wouldn't be a human being.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, and don't worry about it. Just own it. It's all good. It's hard to find a balance between wanting to speak slowly and clearly, but also sounding enthusiastic and inspiring. And that's from Sophie Gordon. Guys, what are your tips on that?
It is, and you've talked about speaking more slowly and even more slowly there, so I think that's very good advice. One of the first speeches I ever did, and this was over 40 years ago, it was a royal occasion, and the Duchess of Windsor was there, and she gave me some advice because I was looking very nervous. I was only a young chap, I was very nervous, and she said, I always speak as though the Queen is at the back of the room. I want to make sure she understands what I've said. I've kind of absorbed that advice. I mean, can't imagine the Queen anymore, obviously, but I can imagine somebody very important at the back of the room who's perhaps a little hard of hearing.
Yoda, for example.
I always
got massive ears. He'll be able to hear.
That's true.
Alan, it's been fantastic to have you on the show. Thank you ever so much for joining us. Some great advice and tips in there.
Definitely.
Thanks, Alan. So we are coming towards the end. If you've got any final questions, guys, please do get those in that chat. If we've missed any, as they've kind of whizzed past us, then we will respond to you separately and maybe do a separate blog on that as well. We've got a couple of other things just to...
Yeah, just
a bit of a wrapping up.
A little bit of a wrapping up.
Covered a bit of a summary.
I mean, very, very quickly, we could talk a little bit about 3 things when it comes to your sort of vocal delivery. We've mentioned pace quite a bit already. Here it is on the slide. So we know that we want to be yourselves, but slow it down. Bring some energy to your performance as well. If you find yourself speaking fast, take a pause, take a break, take a breath. Get a sip of water. No one's going to mind. Tone. What's the most appropriate tone for your presentation? Well, a lot of you want to be friendly, informative, enthusiastic. All of that works, doesn't it? I suppose if you're talking about oysters, it might have a slightly different tone from if you're talking about a medical discovery. But we want to be engaging, enthusiastic and passionate about our subject, and caring towards our audience as well. So those are just some tips on tone. And volume. I mean, you can vary your volume. A lot of people sort of broadcast the whole time, even in everyday life, so you can hear every element of their lives, and that can be quite annoying. Yes, I've just annoyed you completely. You can bring your tone down and soften it so it's more intimate, so people might have to lean in and listen to what you're going to say next. So you can play with volume as well.
I had a school teacher who used to do that.
Really?
And when he could sense that the class wasn't listening, he used to start talking really quietly, and all of a sudden, all of us would be like, "What's going on?" We'd be like, "We're in trouble. What's going on?" And we'd all look at him. And at that point, he had us back in the room.
It worked.
Like genius. Instead of shouting, he went quieter.
Amazing.
Yes. Let's have a quick summary of what we've covered. I've just seen there. Keith has said, "Don't drink fizzy water. Always still."
Such a good point.
Tip. And no dairy as well. Chocolate is awful. It'll make you all.
Coats your throat.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right, what have we covered? So we've covered, hopefully, the difference between TED speeches and business presentations. The audience is the hero. I think that's really important to remember that. understand your personal brand, spend a bit of time thinking about that. When Vic was talking about tone of voice a moment ago, I was thinking about the way that I present when I'm in a business meeting, when I'm talking to a potential new client. And I'll be honest with you, I sometimes struggle with that because actually my tone of voice and my brand, I tend to be quite friendly, and I wear trainers and things like that. And if I go to a big corporate meeting, sometimes I can feel like I don't want to become someone else. I just want to be myself. Yeah. So really important to spend some time understanding that and becoming comfortable with it. What you say and how you say it, both are very important. Examples and metaphors, Vic came up with some brilliant examples there, and go and have a look at our blog as well, please, guys. So mediafirst.co.uk. Do a couple of blogs a week, and there's some brilliant examples there of all of this stuff that we've spoken about, blogs and case studies for you to take a look at. And hopefully you've kind of got a sense of how you can apply all of these lessons learned today in all forms of different media. I think that's the wonderful thing about the training that we offer here at Media First, is it's so transferable. You might come and do a message development test, and you might do a crisis media training, or it might be a presentation skills course, or even something on social media, but it's transferable across all forms of comms, isn't it, Vic? So I think that's really cool. Guys, thank you ever so much for coming along and spending some time with us today. We've got an upcoming session for me to flag, which is on Thursday, the 18th of April at 2 o'clock. Slightly different time. Normally we do these at 11 o'clock, but this one's at 2 o'clock, Thursday, the 18th of April. For those of you who are who are Media Team Academy subscribers, we've got a brand new Media Team Academy which launched this week. It is fantastic. If you guys don't know about it, get in touch with us, find out about it, because then you can get access to masterclasses like this every single month for free. And there's loads of other things like online courses and stuff like that. So get in touch, drop us a note in the chat. Thank you to everybody behind the scenes. Thank you to all you lovely lot for being there. Really appreciate all the lovely comments. Have a good rest of your day and take care.
May the force be with you.
May the force be with you.